Before I start, let me acknowledge my co-author, Danny Farrell. Can you please stand up and be recognized? Let me just walk you through the presentation. This is the overview. The objective of the study is to review and assess the different programs being offered by state universities and colleges vis-a-vis their mandates and the quality of their graduates, and recommend courses of actions as well as an action plan to pursue the findings and recommendations. Let me point out at this point that this study was part of the zero-based budgeting set of studies commissioned by the Department of Budget and Management. Now, what is the motivation for the study? And why the concern about faithfulness to SUC's mandates? The concern really arises from the fact that if SUCs offer programs outside their mandates, that tends to increase the number of program offerings, which in turn tends to increase per student cost and tends to result in waste of resources. Now, at the same time, offering programs outside their mandates is associated with program duplication. What do we mean by program duplication? That means that you have a SUC that offers a program that is being offered by either another SUC or another HEI, private. And that tends to crowd out private higher education institutions. Now, why the concern about quality? For the most part, people would say it's important to have SUCs, especially in the regions, because that improves access. But we argue that access is only meaningful if one also gets quality. And the measure of quality, why do you want quality? Because that's really what is linked with, hopefully, productivity and employability. The limitation of the study is that when we look at quality of education, we have perhaps not quite a good measure. We only looked at pass rates in terms of professional board exams. One can always argue that that's not a good measure of quality. It's very limiting, and one should look at whether graduates of state universities and college and private higher education institutions actually gets employed. But then having no graduate tracking survey to speak of, we content ourselves with passing rates. We looked at all SUCs in the regions. Basically, we did a desk review of all the program offerings and enrollment in the various programs as well as the pass rates for all the SUCs individually. We also conducted the informal interviews with selected SUC officials, regional officials of the CHED, as well as the NEDA, which incidentally, the NEDA regional directors incidentally sits on the board of many of the SUCs. Now, what are some of the findings? In terms of program offerings relative to their mandates, 50 to 90% of the programs being offered by the SUCs are outside their core mandates. By core mandates, we mean the programs that are explicitly enumerated in their charters. So, 50 to 90%. For the most part, this is because about 20 SUCs have limited mandates. But the primary reason is that almost half of the SUCs have charters that allow them to offer programs outside of their core mandates. So if you look at their charters, you would see phrases that reads like, they can offer, in addition to the list, they can also offer programs as their Board of Regents see fit, as long as it's consistent with regional development goals, provincial development goals, and so on and so forth. So it's allowed in their charters. That's the short answer. Now, nonetheless, you see about 10 SUCs that have remained faithful to their core mandates and whose program offerings, about 90% to 100% of their program offerings are within their core mandates. Also, you have another 10 SUCs that have recently, whose charters have been amended fairly recently, and that the amendment resulted in an expansion of the mandates. For instance, you would see small colleges in the regions that have been, by virtue of legislation, converted to a university, and part of that conversion would say, henceforth, they can now offer anything, practically anything under the sun, from accountancy to business to medicine to law, criminology, everything and anything is written there. So for these new SUCs, SUCs whose charters have been amended, naturally, lahat na is within their core mandates. Now, given the prevalence of SUCs with program offerings outside their core mandates, it is not surprising that there is duplication in their program offerings relative to those of other SUCs in the same region. On the average, the program duplication rate varies from 55 to 57% if computed based on total number of program offerings, and 89 to 92% if computed based on total enrollment. Over 70% of all SUCs covered, all SUCs studies, because all SUCs were studied, registered duplication rates that are upwards of 75%. The region with the highest duplication rate is Region 7, and the region with the lowest is R. High rates of program duplications appear to be associated with the increase in the number of programs offered by SUCs during the period. Around 80% of the SUCs have increased the number of programs they are offering in 2005-2010. So 80% have increased the program offerings. Now, why is program duplication an issue? Because, well, earlier studies have shown that the number of programs offered tend to increase per student cost of SUCs. We always, I think part of the myth when you talk about SUCs financing is this myth that SUCs are underfunded. Perhaps on the average that is true, but when you actually look at per student costs and scrutinize per student costs across individual SUCs, you see a wide disparity, and you would find even a state university whose per student cost is well above 100,000 per year. And then when you see that, one can ask, where is the underfunding? At the same time, FGD's focus group discussions with private higher education institutions indicate that program duplication is a problem from their perspective, in the sense of SUCs crowding out existing programs of private higher education institutions, and also the issue of their being an uneven playing field. Let me just explain that a little bit. Many of the private higher education institutions would argue that if once a state university in the region decides to offer a program that is traditionally being offered by the private, the enrollment tends to shift towards the state universities and college, the SUC, because of the low tuition in the SUC, thereby crowding out the private sector. But beyond that, the problem they say is that the state universities and colleges CHED tends not to apply the same rules because the supervision of CHED over the SUCs, it appears, is less than the supervision they are providing or applying to the private higher education institutions because of this whole issue of SUCs being autonomous. Now, quality of instruction. The average passing rate for 42 PBEs in the period 2004-2011 ranged from 52% to 59%. Only 11 out of 42, this will be 42 PBEs, had average passing rates above 70%, and only 7 had passing rates above 80% in 2011. And here I show you the courses that have passing rates above 60%. The other programs have passing rates below 60%. On the average, SUC's passing rate is higher than the national average for all PBEs. But that edge has been declining in 27 out of the 42 PBEs, or in 65% of the professional board examination. And let me point you to the ratio of SUC's passing rate to the average HEI passing rate. And you will see here that the ratio is declining, and what that shows is that the performance of the SUCs, although is still above the average nationwide, is on the decline for these programs that we are showing, and that includes accountancy, Chem-Eng, Civil Eng, Electronics Eng, Medical Technology, and Social Works, among others. Also, the average numbers that we see mask wide disparity in SUCs PBE across individual SUCs. So on the average, they look good. They may not look as good when you look at them individually. And in this regard, we note a worrisome trend, which is the preponderance of SUCs with zero passing rate in many PBEs. What we mean by that when you try to group the SUCs in terms of parang brackets, how many SUCs have zero passing rates, how many SUCs have passing rates between 1% and 5%, and so on and so forth. Normally, we expect parang a normal distribution. But what we see is a distribution that is skewed to the left, meaning yung pinakamaraming number is the SUC with the zero passing rate. And so you have zero, ang dami-daming zero. Tapos may long tail. And you see that in courses after courses after courses, year after year. So this is the one for accountancy. You have also something for similar for agriculture and that's true for agriculture, accountancy, electrical engineering, electronics engineering, etc., etc. Moreover, many SUCs have passing rates that are zero for many years. Hindi lang paminsan-minsan, but consistently zero. And the list, so this I have listed, I don't expect you to be able to read. I just want to show na marami sila. And the list of SUCs with passing rates below national average is even longer. I just want to sort of elicit some shock, because I think we always think of when we send our children to school, enroll natin sa accountancy, with the hope that at the end of 5 years, at the end of 4 years, you get an accountant. You enroll your child in engineering, and you say, I will get at the end of the 5 years an engineer, licensed at that. And the problem with this situation is that parang nag-i-invest, not just maybe mababa yung tuition, but we invest time. We invest money as well because sometimes the tuition is the smallest part of the cost. When you send your children to public schools, the big part of the cost is really the time of the students as well as the out-of-pocket cost attending school, boarding house, lodging, the bagon money. But, and yet, it's like a false promise. So I can go on and on because I find that shocking. At the same time, an average SUC passing rate that is above the national average does not always guarantee that satellite campuses are performing as well. During our focus group discussions, of course we tended to interview the mother SUCs, and they would say, oh, the problem is not with the mother campuses, but the problem is with the satellite campuses, because the satellite campuses tends to bring up the average. But the fact is, that's not always the case. Sometimes it's the mother campuses themselves that is the problem. Now, recommendations. To help rationalize program offerings of SUCs and improve quality, really the first recommendation is for CHED to apply an existing CMO and close existing programs where the passing rate is 0 for 3 consecutive years, at the minimum. And then to apply this not just on the average, but also to be more focused and look separately from the satellite to the mother campuses. Improve CHED's ability to ensure that SUC's program offerings comply with its policies, standards, and guidelines for these programs. Within CHED, there is some kind of ambivalence towards this because they said, as I noted earlier, that the SUCs are autonomous, very difficult to monitor, very difficult to apply the policies, standards, and guidelines. But on the other hand, if you think about it, in every SUC, the chairman of the Board of Regents is a CHED commissioner. And what better way to use that as the venue in the fact that CHED commissioner law. And then there's the issue of SUCs. Let me backtrack a bit. Bakit nga ba offer ng kung ano-anong program? One of the primary reasons is, they want to be able to offer the popular program, the program that is uso. At some time in the past, it's nursing, now it's IT. So everybody wants to offer that. Because that's where the money is. They look at this as like an income-generating project. They want to generate some tuition, no matter how small the tuition they charge. And perhaps one way of trying to compensate for this trend is to tweak the normative financing formula being used by CHED in computing the allocation to the SUCs. Now, many SUCs put in place measures that they say will improve quality, and this includes review classes, administration of pre-board exams, where non-passers are not given certification to take the PBE. But all these measures, I think for the most part, are illusory because they just tend to hide the problem rather than to address the problem. And when you look at studies we see that really the key here is faculty. Faculty development is the key to improving quality. And here we call on improve the usage of the HEDF towards a faculty development. And I think I never presentation.